Well, you've likely seen the headlines over the weekend all about President Donald Trump's tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. Now, if you're wondering why are we talking about this here on The Story, well, it's because this could have big impacts on Oregonians, especially when it comes to your utility bills. The president wants 25% tariffs on nearly all goods coming into the U.S. from Canada and Mexico, and a 10% tariff on all Chinese imports. The tariffs on Mexico and Canada are an attempt from Trump to crack down on immigration and illegal fentanyl coming into the country. But earlier today, Trump delayed the tariffs on Mexican goods for 1 month after Mexico agreed to increase their border security. And after a weekend of proposed retaliation, basically a trade war from our longtime ally Canada, Prime Minister Trudeau announced Trump's tariffs will be postponed by at least a month. In return, Canada will increase their border security, just like Mexico. But it's those potential Canadian tariffs that could hurt Oregonians. Local gas companies are already warning customers of potential impacts to their utility bills. Take Northwest Natural, for example, the state's largest natural gas utility, with customers spanning from the Portland metro area to the Oregon coast. Now, they get much of their natural gas from Western Canada. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, more than 1 in 3 Oregon households use natural gas as their primary energy source to heat their homes. And more than half of Oregon households heat with electricity. A spokesperson for Northwest Natural Gas told me today they will be closely monitoring the impact on prices in the months to come. In a statement, the spokesperson said, given the potential negative impacts of these tariffs on U.S. energy users, we hope the Trump administration reconsiders. Now, I also checked in with Portland General Electric today, the state's largest electric utility, which also relies on natural gas for about 40% of its resources. That's according to recent data. A PGE spokesperson told me, we continue to work closely with our peers across the energy industry to evaluate potential impacts of recent federal decisions. The Oregon Public Utility Commission, a state government agency that, among other things, monitors impacts to utility rates, told me today, in part, quote, it is too early, however, to know what potential impacts tariffs would have on power costs or the cost of natural gas. If and when a filing to request rate recovery is submitted, the PUC will protect customers by scrutinizing those requests to ensure any proposed changes are justified. Now, just a couple of hours ago, I talked with Tim Belden. He's the founder of Energy GPS, a Portland-based electricity and natural gas consulting firm. He analyzes wholesale electricity and natural gas markets. Belden tells me Oregon and Washington receive 86% of its natural gas supply from Canada. 14% comes from the Rockies. And unless we do a multi-year pipeline expansion project, we couldn't get more from the Rockies. So in short, we are extremely reliant on Canada for natural gas. Now, if these tariffs go through, he says it is very likely the Canadian sellers would be able to push that cost onto the buyers in the United States, and very likely you.
The market value of the natural gas in the winter that the Northwest uses is about it's about $13 to $15 million a day. That's the market value of the natural gas. And so if you put a 10% tariff on that, you're going to have $1.3 to $1.5 million a day of increased costs associated with the Canadian natural gas.
All right, now we want to bring in live Bob Jenks. He's the executive director of the Oregon Citizens Utility Board. It's an organization that's been advocating for utility customers for more than 40 years, including working with policymakers to try and cut the cost of utilities. Mr. Jenks, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right, let's get right to it here. Do you think Oregonians should be worried about these potential tariffs?
Yes, they should definitely be worried. A tariff is a tax, and if you put a tax on natural gas and on hydroelectricity coming out of Canada, you're directly taxing the heating and cooling of Oregonians. You're taxing both gas and your electric bills, and customers will ultimately pay the price.
Do we have any concept of how high people could be paying, like what the difference could be if these tariffs went into place?
No, we can't. It's hard to project because the tariffs not only raise the price of the things that are directly bought from Canada, but they affect the market. Gas from the Rockies will be able to sell to suppliers in the Northwest for a higher price because their main competitor is a higher price. So there'll be additional market impacts of this that will probably push up the cost beyond just the cost of the tariffs, but it will be significant.
Is there anything that Oregonians can do to protect themselves from financial impact from these tariffs?
The first thing we need to do is we need to follow through on trying to sort of make our utility systems and our regulatory system more customer friendly. We've had about a 50% rate hike on both the electric and gas side over the last 4 or 5 years, and customers have been struggling to afford it. This last year was a record for the number of people who were shut off, who were disconnected from their utilities because they couldn't afford to pay it. So we're asking the PUC and the Oregon legislature to address this affordability crisis that's only going to be made worse by tariffs.
So some utility companies that I talked with today, they're not concerned that these tariffs will impact them. The People's Utility District in Tillamook and the Columbia River told me they're not sure if they'll be impacted. They don't anticipate customers seeing much effect on their bills. What do you make of that? Should these companies be more concerned?
The folks that you were just speaking to are primarily publicly owned utilities that get hydropower from the federal government. From the Bonneville Power Administration, and so for those, they don't have a whole lot of natural gas generation in their electric supply, though they should worry still about the market impacts. If these cause market prices to go up, Bonneville trades in the market, and it could well impact those. But those utilities, publicly owned utilities, will have a smaller impact than, say, Portland General Electric or Pacific Power.
Okay, so you did just talk about it briefly, but your organization is supporting a bill in Salem this legislative session called the Fair Energy Act. Can you tell us more about what that is and what it does? Why should people be paying attention to that, especially right now?
Yeah, after last year where we saw a big rate hikes, we saw a huge number of customers be disconnected. We started talking to legislators about what can we do about it. And so the bill would give the PUC more power. It would direct them to sort of consider the impact on customers of their decision. It's really designed to make the customer more central to the regulatory system rather than focusing on the utility. And it would do things like allow them to delay rate hikes outside of the winter. So we're not seeing, like we did a year ago, where we had an 18% rate hike right in the middle of some of the coldest weather we had had in a couple of years. And really saw outrageous bills. So we think there's some good elements in there that will help give the PUC the ability to tamp down on some of these rate hikes that utilities are proposing.
All right, this is an important issue. We will definitely be following it. Bob Jenks, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Great, thank you.
All right, now if these tariffs happen, there may actually be a silver lining for some smaller Oregon utility companies. The general manager for the People's Utility District in Clatsikai told me they don't foresee any negative impacts on them as a company or for their customers. And that's because, quote, they don't purchase power, equipment, or other goods and services from Canada. Our largest customers do not as well. And if anything, it'll make our customers' products more competitive in the marketplace due to the increased tariffs.